Hey, what is going on, guys? XpertFusion here, and today I'm going to be giving you guys an interesting video topic to discuss, and that is everything I don't like about The Walking Dead, because I'm always here talking amazing stuff about the show, saying it's amazing, incredible, because it is my favorite show of all time. I do consider it to be one of the best shows I've ever watched. It's part of my life now. I mean, I have a whole channel mainly based around it, so yeah, I love this show. I do. And people always criticize me. They're saying, all you talk is good stuff. You don't criticize it. You must be just a blind fanboy. And I'm like, no. There's stuff I don't like about the show. There's a lot of stuff I don't like. And that's what I want to do in this video, is discuss those things I don't like and just talk about each of those things. Because no, it's not a perfect show. No, not at all. There's clearly problems with it, just like any other show. And I think it's important to discuss those problems, so maybe hopefully they're fixed in the future. Some of them I don't feel like will be, because they just constantly do them. But it is what it is. Let's just talk about these things. But of course, note that these things don't really ruin the show for me. I still love the show. I'm still such a big fan of it. So these things aren't enough to destroy my enjoyment of it. They're just sort of nitpicks in some ways. Some of them are bigger than others. Starting off with the grainy, fuzzy look, especially with darker episodes that this show has. So if you haven't realized, they record on film, not digital, so not digitally. So what that means is it's gonna look a little fuzzy, especially when you kind of make it bigger. So if you're watching on like a small screen, you're not really gonna notice it. But if you're watching on like a 65-inch TV, trust me, you notice the fuzziness. I notice it, everyone else does, and it can be kind of distracting sometimes, especially in scenes where it's either just really just hard to see because of the fuzziness, or just because of the fact that it's a really dark episode, and sometimes they're not really good at making those dark episodes look clear. I mean, for an example, season 8 episode 13, which I love that episode, but there was that little shootout sequence. Some of the scenes were kind of hard to see, like when Tara got shot with the arrow. My first watch, I did not notice that Tara got shot, and it's not just me. I watched a ton of reactors to that same exact scene. Tons of people, they didn't know Tara got shot either. They didn't realize till like a couple minutes after, because they didn't make it clear enough, because it was so dark. And of course, if you have a TV, maybe your brightness is turned all the way up, whatever, you might be able to see a little bit easier, but not everyone has the luxury of having some HD 4K XXYZ TV. Some people just have some simple designs, and it's not going to be easy to see what's going on, and I think they need to make it a little bit clear. And that grainy, fuzzy look, I'm not a big fan of, personally. Next up is kind of similar to what I just said. Sometimes the action is kind of hard to see what's going on clearly. Now, I'm not saying this is all the time. I'm just saying sometimes. A lot of the time, the action's great. I mean, let's talk about No Way Out, Too Far Gone. A lot of those episodes, the action is fantastic. It's pretty clear what's happening. It's pretty clear who's shooting at who. It's pretty clear who got shot in what instance. It's very clear. But then there's some episodes, particularly a couple season 8 episodes, a couple even more recent episodes in season 9 and 10, even some further back episodes, season 3, they had a few like this, where it's just really not easy to see what's happening, to the point where, yeah, after a million watches, you're going to be able to tell what's happening. But your first watch, which is the most important watch by far, because that's where your first opinions come in, it can be kind of distracting, kind of hard to see exactly what's happening. So that, to me, is an issue. And another thing that kind of connects to what I just said is that sometimes the scenes are weirdly shot, and to the point where they don't really know how to handle it without a character dying. Like, for example, Rick versus Negan in season 8 episode 8, they set the scene up so Rick would be getting Lucille and Negan would be on the floor. Now, they set it up in position. Obviously, they don't want Negan to die, so they set it up in a position where they're like, okay, we need to make Rick do something that doesn't kill Negan and gets him wounded, but for some reason, they have Rick hit him with the wrong end of Lucille. You know what I mean? It was odd. It's like, well, couldn't you just have Rick swing with the right end, but as he's swinging, then Negan kicks him and he falls over, something like that. Or like they'll have a scene where, like in season 8 episode 2, where Morgan and a couple of the guys will be sitting there with guns holding them up, and then guys will come around the corner and they'll just stand there and not shoot right away. It's kind of like, it's odd, it's oddly shot, and people blame the writing for that, and I'm sitting here like, are you stupid? That has nothing to do with the writing. There's not one point in the writing that's important. That's something that the directors need to handle. They need to look at scenes and be like, okay, the writing, lays out the dialogue and how the scenes flow and how they go, right? But like the in-depth stuff like that, like how long it takes for someone to shoot their gun, you have to make it so it's shot right, so it doesn't look unrealistic, and so it looks like it would be something that would happen in real life. You know what I mean? And although, you know, you can make a million excuses for why Rick decided to use the wrong end of Lucille to hit Negan. You can make a million different excuses. At the end of the day, some people just don't understand what, you know, it might actually be, and it wasn't clear enough as to what he maybe was actually trying to do. So just having him do something different, like just hitting him with the right side, and then but Negan kicks him before he's able to actually swing it at him, that would make so much more sense. It would make the scene fit a lot better, in my opinion. Next up, sometimes they have some really odd sound effects. Now, the sound design for the most part is really good in the show, but there were some episodes where, like, this happened in season 7 a lot, where they'd stab a walker, right? And it would just make a weird, like a weird sound that isn't normal to what we usually hear when they stab walkers. Or like Rick's gun, he has the same AK-47 and the same revolver for a decent amount of the show, but for some reason as time goes on it just changes the sound and it just sounds different than it did before. Why? Guns don't change noises like that. They don't just all of a sudden, oh, new sound. No, they stay pretty consistent with how they're going to sound, unless maybe you use different caliber rounds. But most guns, you know, I don't think Rick changed his caliber of ammo. I'm pretty sure he's using the same shit. So how is it changing the sound it makes? I don't know. Of course, also depending on where you're, you know, located, if you're inside or outside, it might make a different sound, but it'll be the same thing. He'll be inside and inside in 2 instances, and the guns will sound different. So that's a little off to me. But all these things I haven't stated so far, not that big of a deal, to be completely honest. I can overlook it. Maybe not the fuzzy thing, that really does kind of bother me, but most of the stuff is overlookable and I could just say whatever. 'Cause to me, the writing is the most important thing, and there's not a lot of problems with the writing in the show, in my opinion. I don't think there's many issues with the writing. I think it's very solid. Next up is kind of some weird stuff that I'm not a big fan of with the writing, and we'll get into that. Actually, we'll get into that after this. Another thing is just how easy it is to kill walkers in this show. It makes so the point where 1 or 2 walkers feels insignificant. Now, I like how they didn't make walkers like Night of the Living Dead, where they're just sprinting, because that's obviously not the point of the show. The show wants to make walkers feel realistic and what the zombie apocalypse would actually be like. And yeah, if it was to happen, I think the zombies would be pretty damn slow, so it's realistic for that. But I hate how, like, there's been so many instances where there's a walker coming up to them. Make a Path Presents would agree with me on this if you guys watch Ronnie Hayes. He said this a million times. But, like, they'll just take a knife and go, and the walker will die. Are you kidding me? I understand the zombie is rotting, right? I'm sure the skull's rotting a little bit too. But even with a rotting skull, going like will not kill it. It will not. Even if you stab it in the eye, it does not matter. That's not gonna go through the skull and through the brain, just going like they had like Jessie, I think season 6, episode 5, there was a walker, she just goes like, what? That's so stupid. Every single time they kill a walker with like a knife, especially if it's a small knife, that we should have the characters go like that. It should be hard, right? Hard. And I want to see scenes where they do that, but it doesn't go in far enough because it's a small knife and it's still in the walker's head, and then they fall back and they're like, shit, the walker's still attacking them with the knife stuck in the head. Stuff like that would be awesome. They've done a lot of stuff where they like hit the walker and like it doesn't die at the first hit. That's cool, I like that. But have it more often where instead of you just going like to the walker, it's so stupid how it goes like that. You know, that's not how easy it is to kill walkers or just stab a knife through a skull. It's not that simple. It should take maybe like a couple hits with a knife and then a hard one for just one walker. That would make walkers so much more frightening, so they're not just this thing that we just kind of say, there's 1 or 2 of them, it's not really that big of a deal, you can go kill them real easily. Now, it would make people use weapons that are a little more practical, unlike little tiny knives that really aren't that practical against walkers. You should be using like spears and axes, and they do that, especially in recent seasons. They've been using some really cool long-range weaponry, and I like that a lot. But it's really just weird. It's just unrealistic to see walkers die that easily sometimes, and I don't like when that happens. It kind of gets me out of the moment a little bit. But Next up is a sort of a dialogue thing that I don't like, and it's the phrase, one particular phrase that has been said I can probably say more than 100 times on the show, and it's the phrase I have to, or we have to, or I need to, or something like that. Any variation of that phrase, I've heard that phrase a million goddamn times in the show, and I'm sick of it. I'm so sick of it, because every time someone says it, I'm like, what do you mean you have to? You don't have to. There's no human being speaks like that. I'm sorry. Now, if there's something wrong with the person, like Morgan, for example, Morgan, I think, is very, very different than most characters because he clearly has some sort of a personality disorder. It's pretty obvious. Anyone who has studied psychology can tell that. He's some sort of a personality disorder. I can't put my finger on which one, but it's something, right? So him saying, oh, I have to do this, I have to clear, it makes sense, and it works for him, and I actually like that dialogue. That's why Morgan's one of my favorite characters, because he's so interesting. But any random character saying that, like, we've seen Carl say that a lot, like Maggie said it a few times, Carol, what do you mean you have to? No, that's not how people say it. If you tell your family you're gonna go to ShopRite, right? Then they ask, you don't have to, why are you going? And then you just go, I have to. No, what? Just say, oh no, I'm going because I need to get some milk, right? So why not say that in any other instance, right? Like, I'll give you an example. Season 6, episode 13. Carol and Maggie were outside, or episode 12 it was actually. They were outside of the compound that was being attacked, and Maggie wanted to go fight, right? She wanted to go help join the fight, and then Carol was like, no, Maggie, you can't go. And then Maggie's like, I have to. Carol's like, you're supposed to be someone else. That's cringy dialogue. I'm sorry. That's not how people should be talking. Maggie instead would be like, no, I gotta go help. You know, they're being attacked. They need our help. Something like that, right? And then Carol says, no, you're not. You're pregnant. You can't do that. Something like that. Not, I have to. Like, what do you, no, I'm sorry. I just don't like that dialogue. It's been used way too much in the show. And it's not like it's something that's just specifically in any particular season. No, it's been said since season 1, and it's still being said to this day. I don't know why the writers feel like that dialogue is necessary, but it's just, I just don't like it that much. Another complaint I have is that a lot of times in the show, they'll show a character going up to a group of walkers, and then next thing you know, all the walkers will be dead. They'll skip over it. They've been doing this a lot recently. They did it in season 8, episode 7, where Rick went up to some group of walkers and they all were just dead in the next scene. Recently, in season 10, episode 3, Carol just completely finished off all the walkers without us seeing it. And it kind of removes your sense of disbelief because, especially when it's a large group of walkers, you're like, I'm really curious as to how the hell they possibly were able to kill all those walkers. Or for the fact that you just want to see some walker killing. I mean, the reason why they do it is because they don't want to waste time with stuff that we don't need to see. And yeah, of course, we don't need to see them killing all the walkers. We've seen enough walker kills in the show, but I still want to see it. It's still The Walking Dead at the end of the day, and seeing walkers die is one of the portions of the show I love a lot. And skipping them over like that kind of bothers me. I kind of wish they didn't, but I could kind of understand this from its point of view of the directors and the producers just wanting to, you know, save some time up for the episode. So it's not that big of a complaint, but when they do it a lot, it bothers me. Next up, I think is the last thing that I'm going to mention is not really a problem with the show itself, but it's a problem with the community. And it does ruin the show a little bit, and that is the spoilers. This community is such a big one because the show is very popular to the point where, and it's very, very vocal. Like, there's tons of people talking about it on Twitter. Usually when the new episodes are live on air, usually it's trending on Twitter. So the spoilers are almost impossible to avoid. Unless you're like a very casual viewer who doesn't really follow any Walking Dead related things on Twitter, doesn't follow any Walking Dead related channels on YouTube, they're very, very to themselves. They just watch the show casually. Like, I do that for some shows, you know, like I'm trying to think of some show. There's some shows out there I definitely watch casually, and I'm not really following any channels that talk about it. And there are really some of these shows that don't even have channels based on it. But The Walking Dead has such a big fan base, it's nearly impossible to avoid spoilers, especially for major characters. It's like, if you're on the internet, you're gonna come across it. There's really no way you can avoid it. And that kind of bothers me because I want to be surprised for all these big deaths. sometimes it's just not possible. I mean, the only way I could do it is if I literally avoid my entire comment section at all, because people are gonna put comments that are spoilers all the time. They do that. Like, I made a death prediction video for the Heads on Pikes victims last season. All the comments right when the spoilers came out, which they sometimes come out way ahead of time, because I hate the spoiling dead fans on Facebook. They're the ones who spread these spoilers around in the first place. Once they post them, everyone starts putting them in the comments, and they might just unfilter it, just say screw it, I'm just gonna spoil it for everyone. Or they do what I hate even more is when they try to play off these spoilers as predictions. They're like, you know what, I predict Henry, Tara, and Enid to die in the Pikes, and it gets a little fishy. Literally everyone is predicting that, and I'm sitting here like, okay, then it must be a spoiler if everyone's predicting it. That happened with Sadiq. I wasn't actually spoiled for Sadiq's death, but so many people were predicting it, so I was like, why is everyone just jumping on this Sadiq's gonna die train out of nowhere? So it made me think, shit, he might be dying. But I wasn't completely spoiled, which was surprising. I'm surprised I wasn't just absolutely demolished by that spoiler. But to be fair, I did kind of stay off the internet for a few days around before that episode came out, so that was a little good on my part. But I'm not trying to do that for every single episode. I mean, there's 16 episodes a year. I'm not trying to sit here and not talk about anything regarding the show. It's just a little ridiculous to me. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let me know the things you don't like about the show in the comment section below. Like I said, a lot of the things have to do with more like directing, not really the writing. There are some other problems that I didn't really mention because I just don't want to get in depth into them, because they're not really things the show can handle. Spoilers, like I said, they can't directly handle, but they kind of can if they just try to make them a little more secretive. Would be kind of nice. But stuff like actors leaving, like Rick leaving, Maggie leaving, Michonne leaving, that bothers me, but it's not something they can handle, really. It happens, right? People want to move on, and so I'm not going to complain about that, even though technically that is something I don't like about this show, is how they have to write the whole story around the actors' schedules sometimes, and I don't like that. I want them to write the story how they want to tell it, not how they're forced to tell it because of what the actors have to do for their lives or whatever it may be. But they always make a way to work it out. I mean, Maggie's coming back, Rick's got the movies, Michonne probably will be in the movies, so they work it out regardless of these problems, and I appreciate that, and they make it work in the story. That's a sign of some good ass writers, that they're able to make it work even ahead of time, even with knowing things like that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Like I said, let me know what you liked or don't like about the show in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.